Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is yet another dupe video. It's been a long time that I've not done this video and I know a lot of people enjoy my dupe videos, so I thought that this is a perfect palette, especially because it's sold out. It's right now available on the Bella Beaute Bar website for a pre-order for 8 weeks. So yeah, if you want to see how I dupe the Bella Beaute Bar Basic Witch palette, then please keep on watching. This palette retails at $65 and it absolutely sold out the day it launched. I was eyeing this palette. I was really eyeing this palette, but you know that I have a threshold of 10 palettes to buy this year. So I was really eyeing their recently de-influenced palette also. Once I look at that color story, then I can make more of a conscious decision whether I need this palette or that palette. When I saw the color story, I immediately came downstairs to dupe the palette. Just to see if these shades are available in my collection or not. So you can be the judge of it. You can tell me it does look like that or it doesn't look like that. I'm open to comments. Okay, let's begin duping this palette because I'm really excited. Now, there won't be one palette that I'm duping the entire color story with. I would be playing around with palettes, with different palettes that I have in my collection, but majority of them are from Ladybug Glow palettes. So if you do have these palettes in your collection, you can save some money. But if you do not have these palettes in your collection, so it'll be better to go and buy the Bella Beaute Bar palette if you really like the color story. I do have a code with Bella Beaute Bar and it is Smithy Sony. That can save you 10% off. So feel free to use that code if you want. But yeah, let's begin because I am super excited. The first shade in the palette is called Perfectly Wicked, and that looks like a soft baby peachy pink with like golden shifting shade. It's like a duochrome shade. So as soon as I saw that shade, I really thought of this Galaxia Magica palette from Ladybug Glow, and this has quite a bit of few shades that corresponds to that palette, and I was thinking about this shade, which is Stardust. So let's swatch that. This is the first shade. So as you can see, it has like a peachy pink background, but it also shifts to a golden shade. So I felt like that shade would be really pretty for duping the first shade. Again, I'm just trying to get close to that palette, not saying it's going to be an exact dupe. But if you're trying to save some money, find some inspiration out of this. The second shade in the palette is called Glinda, and that looks like a baby pink shade, which I felt like a lot of the shades can be duped by the Blend Bunny palette, especially if you have the first palette, the Blends palette. I feel like that can be duped, but we're going to dupe it out with this shade, which is Rome, and this is like a baby pink pastel shade. So let's swatch that. There you go. And I watched a lot of videos against my skin tone so that I can come very close to the swatches and the shades. So that's duping the shade Glinda. Next, let's move on to the shade called Witch Please, which I have a few options actually. If you do have the Pond Lily palette, they have the shade Lotus. This is again from Ladybug Glow. This also has a few shades from that palette that can be duped easily. So I'm going to use this shade, but also I know a lot of people have the Heather Austin palette. The Heather Austin palette also has the shade which is Passport, which also can be duped. So yes, feel free to use whatever shade you like. I'm going to go into the shade Lotus. There you go. And that is duping the shade Witch Please. You can see how much shift in dimension this shade has. Like I really love that shade. Okay, the next shade in the palette is called Conjur, which again, I'm going to use my primal palette and I'm going to take this shade, which is Nectar, because this is also like a hot pink shade. And let's swatch that. There you go. So that's duping the shade Conjur. Really pretty shade. Okay, now let's move on to the next shade, which is called Grimoire. I don't know. It's like a sunflowery yellow orangey shade, which again, we're going to dip back into the Galaxia Magica palette and we're going to swatch this shade, which is Solar. Again, you can see it's like a sunflower yellow orangey shade. So let's swatch that. And I do have a review using that palette on my channel. So if you want to check it out for more inspo using that palette and creating more looks, feel free to do that. I'm going to do another swatch just so that you can see it very nicely. And that's the shade Grimoire. Okay, now let's move on to the next set of shades, the second row. First shade in the second row is called Hex, and this is like a pale lavendery shade. In the primal palette, we do have these two shades, but I feel like nothing is like, if you mix this and this together, you might get a shade. So if you do have this palette, just mix it. Or if you do have the newest Nightshade palette from Gourmand Girls, it has a pale lavender shade right there, which I feel like is very close to that. This shade is called Belladonna. So let's do that. There you go. So that's that lavendery shade, Hex. Now let's move on to the next shade, which is Black Magic. And this is more of like an in-between version of a pink and a purple. And this has been duped by this shade, which is Cosmic from, again, Galaxia Magica palette. Let's see. I feel like it can be in between this and this. Now when I'm thinking about it, it can even be close to this shade. How about this? I feel like that should be nice. The Nightshade shade in the palette. Oh, wow. Okay. This shade, Flip Flops, from the Cool Summer palette from It's Belle Cosmetics, looks like a perfect shade. How about swatching this? I feel like this is the closest. Change of plans. There you go. Yeah, I feel like that's a perfect match. I'm so happy. Okay, there you go. That is duping the shade Black Magic. Now let's move on to the next shade, which is Hackett, which is more of like I don't know, eggplanty, pinky purple shade. I'm pretty sure. Where's my primal? Yeah, primal has it. It's like a deep eggplanty. Yeah, this shade. Exotic. This shade, that's exactly the shade. Obviously, I'm putting a picture on the screen for you guys of the basic witch palette so that you can compare. I feel like this is very close. There you go. That is Hackett. I love that shade. Love, love, love that shade from the primal palette. Okay, the next shade in the palette is definitely a multichrome. So I have to dip into one of my singles, which is from Terra Moons. Or if you do have the Adept Minka palette, I have that shade in this. That's why I'm just holding this. But Adept's Minka palette has a shade called Celine. This is the shade, which is exactly similar to that shade. Or Terra Moons ultraviolet shade from Terra Moons also looks very, very similar. I'm gonna swatch the shade Selena from the Adept Minka palette because I feel like that's the closest. And this dupes the shade Resting Witch Face. Look at that. Look at that. I love it. Okay, next. The next shade is called Incarnation, which I feel like Heather Austin palette, this shade, Video Chat, is very, very close to that. It has that orangey, pinky, greeny shift to it. I feel like this is the closest that I can get to that palette, like for this shade. So I'm gonna swatch that. Also, Bella Beauty Bar, the Sun and the Sea palette, I have that. That has a few fiery shades. So if you have that, that can also be replaced, I feel like. So that's the shade that dupes Incarnation. Now the next shade in the palette is called Black Cat, which I feel when you see swatches like on their website, it looks like a black, but I also feel like people who have swatched it seems like that black has like a deepened burgundy undertone to it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take this black, the Nocturne shade, mixed with this shade Lethal, just being a little extra, but I feel like that would give me the exact shade that I'm looking for. So let's watch that. And you'll see what I'm talking about. You might see like a lot of black, but it does have that, you know, that burgundy undertone to it. Yeah, just excuse me. But that's how the palette is coming together. We have 4 more shades to go. The next shade in the palette is called Cauldron. Now this gave me a lot of trouble to find an exact match, which I feel like it can come close, but I don't think it's an exact, just because it just seems different in different skin tones. But I feel like it's more of like because when I saw what's her name? Oh my god. When I saw Seeking Shit's video, it seemed like a lot more like sky blue purple shade, but in the pictures it looks green. So I'm assuming that's gonna be like a green, purple, bluey shade. I feel like the closest that I can get is this shade, which is from Cool Summer palette, and this shade is called Waves. So let's watch that. And this palette actually on the It Spells website is on like a great sale. So if you wanna snatch that, do that now. So that's just build up a little bit, just because that is more of a iridescent shade. Looks more blue, right? But I feel like that's the closest that I can get. It's definitely not blue. It has that green and that purple bluey shift. It's a lot of dimension right there. Now next, the next shade in the palette is called Creep It Real, and this I feel like the closest that I can get is this shade, but this actually would be great if I mix this and this together, or if you have Primal. Again, it's a mixing of a lot of shades. So Primal, you can get the same thing by mixing this and this together. I'll show you what I mean by that. Like if I take this shade, Toxin, and Camouflage together, I feel I get very close to that shade. See what I mean? There you go. And that is duping the shade Creep It Real. It's an amazing palette. Like that color story is absolutely stunning. The next shade in the palette is called Hocus Pocus. Now this is another multichrome. So I have to dip into a palette that has a multichrome, which I feel like you can find such a good dupe in the newest Glaminatrix Sugar and Spice palette. Oh my god, stop. And the shade, which is Fennel, this one dupes exactly that shade. So is it a silver? Is it a gold? Is it a green? Is it a blue? We don't know. That's exactly that shade is. So I'm gonna swatch Fennel. Such a stunning shade. There you go. Like you should see it in person, how beautiful that shade is. Like I don't even think that you can see that shift coming through. It's so pretty. Can you see that? Look at that. Oh my god, look at that. It's stunning. It's stunning, you guys. It's stunning. And the last shade in the palette is called Coven, which is another shade from Pond Lily palette. Actually, this has quite a few shades. If you see, that purple is there, that the shade Hackett, that can be duped by this. This can be close to that. This green is there. So which piece is like this here? Yeah, it has a very similar vibes to it. The shade Coven, I'm going to dupe it with this shade, which is Iris. So let's swatch that. It's like a gray purple shade. There you go. And that is the entire palette swatched for you guys. It's such an amazing color story. So if you've been eyeing and you do not have these shades, I would highly recommend Bella Beaute Bar, just because they have amazing formula and amazing color stories. Obviously, I do understand if you do not have these many palettes, you cannot dupe it. But if you do have it, I highly recommend to get into your collection and just duping the vibes of the palette. And that's exactly what I did. I just like duped the vibes of the palette. You guys let me know how I did. Now we're going to dive into this color story and make an eye look on our eyes. So let's begin. Okay, I'm going to first start off with this shade, which is Solar. I'm dying to put that on the eyes. But before that, let's just prime our eyes. I'm going to use my Alter Ego eye primer. I already have mascara on, so try and ignore that. Going to smoothen out my eyelid with that eye primer and prepping it for the eyeshadows. Okay, let's move into that shade Solar, which is this orangey yellow shade. And I'm gonna take that mainly on the inner crease of the eye, just like there. I love this shade. It gives such warmth to the eye, but such a unique shade. Is it yellow? Is it orange? It's right in between, which is exactly what we're looking for. I'm just gonna stop it right there, like right in the center of my eyelid. And I'm gonna take the same shade on the inner third of my lower lash line. I love this shade. Love this shade. I do have a code with Ladybug Glow too. It's Smithy Sony. And you can save 10% off there if you want to. Of course. No pressure. Okay. Now, the next shade that I want to dive into, I really want to go into Coven because that looks amazing. This looks amazing. Oh my God. Okay. This one, the Ladybug Glow Pond Lily palette, and go into Iris. And that, I'm going to take the same brush actually that I used, the BK Beauty A501. And I'm going to take Iris. And I'm going to start on the outer corner and just deepen it out a tad bit, because I definitely want that, you know, that grungy purple on the outer corners. But again, these shades are very different in the color wheel, so I'm not gonna mix it together, but gonna keep it right there. I love that. I love that. I'm also gonna take that on the lower lash line too, just on the outer corners. And I'm then just gonna tilt the brush and slowly start fading that shade, just for a smoother blend. I like that. I like that. Okay, just like that. I really love that. Love that. Okay, I'm gonna take a clean blending brush with no additional products and just blend the edges, just so that there's no harsh lines. Again, opposite in the color wheel. So we have to make sure that this blends nicely. Not worried about this, just because I'm gonna take shimmers. If you know me, you know me. I cannot do anything without the shimmers. Okay, there you go. I love it. I love it. Okay. Okay. What I'm gonna do for the outer corners is basically get a small blending brush. Okay. I'm gonna mix this and this together for that deepened shade, and I'm gonna place that in the outer corner right there, just to deepen it out a further bit more. Now I'm gonna take that exotic shade just a tad bit, and I'm gonna place that right in the center of that orange and that purple meeting together, just to create a little bit of interest on the eye. Do you need it? Absolutely not. But I feel like that will melt that orange and purple really nicely. Again, not focusing anything on the eyelid, just focusing on the edges, just because we have shimmers coming right there. Just a little bit makes a huge difference to blend the shades together. Okay, taking a clean blending brush that we initially took and just blending the edges of everything. Going back into that sunflower yellow shade that we used from the Galaxia Magica palette, the solar shade, just a little bit, just so that we are not losing that at all, because I do not want to lose that. Just like that. Okay, now I'm gonna take that shade from the Heather Austin palette, the Incarnation shade that we duped, this one, and take that right in the center of the eyelid. I'm just gonna melt both of the shades together right in the center. Okay, so is it an orange? Is it a purple? Is it a pink? We don't know. A really lovely shade. Just like that. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is take the same blending brush that we used just to melt the edges together, just so that there's no harsh lines. Just like that. Now for the inner corners, we're gonna dip back into that Galaxia Magica palette and take this shade. I'm gonna place that right there, just a tad bit, right against that orange. It's popping that golden more, but if that was a pink, that would have popped a lot more pink. Okay, now just to tie everything together, going back into that primal palette with that exotic shade, this one, and I'm gonna just place that very close to the lower lash line. I'm gonna finish off this eye with some liner and mascara, and I'll get right back. And that's my final eye look. I really love the way how this eye turned out. I finished off my lips with BFF4 lip liner from Colourpop and KVD's Bow and Arrow. I mean, this was when Kat Von D was Kat Von D. But yes, this I love. I love how grungy it is, how beautiful it is. I don't miss not buying Basic Witch palette because I feel like we achieved a very similar color story with the palettes that I have in my collection. I cannot even take my eyes off. But the color story is amazing. So kudos to Bella Beaute Bar for creating such a beautiful palette for us. Again, if you do not have these many palettes lying around like me, I totally encourage you to dive into your collection and see if you can get this color story or not, if you were interested in it. And if you're not, Bella Beaute Bar palette is right there. You can get it. But that's all for today, guys. If you did like this video, you know what to do. Do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And ring the notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.